What if I told you that the biggest difference between us and our ancestors wasn't the fact that we have all of this technology, wasn't the fact that we now have roads and cars, which means our network, our village is sprawled way more than perhaps our Neolithic brains can handle. It might not even be the fact that we are drawing on all of this excess energy from under the ground as opposed to working with all of the energy simply available on the ground. What if I told you that the biggest difference between us and our ancestors is the fact that we do not pray? It doesn't really exist in the 21st century. Now that's a strange phrase and it's a strange premise for a video, but there's something to it. Now, we do have a certain prayer, we just don't ritualize it, but we do have prayer, kind of. I'm going into a job interview. I'm hoping that it pays off. I'm hoping that the work I've done so far puts me at that space where if there's an opportunity, I'm savvy enough, I'm wise enough to kind of catch it. I'm hoping that I get good news from the doctor. I'm hoping that I'm able to endure in the marathon. There's these wishes. There's these like looking for good fortune is frequently like hoping for good karma, which is bad karma, but we have a certain version of it. But we do not ritualize it. And that perhaps is a world of difference. Now why? Okay, so let's take a step back before we go into the ritual part of prayer and how that affects how we operate, and let's look at how we operate. I'm still kind of stuck with the book The Divine Double. That word, as I've said before, has redeemed the word soul for me. In the fact, so the idea, the premise, if you haven't heard me say it before, is that you have a current self and a future self. Okay. We can all, religious or not, we're good so far. Okay, and the idea is you're always aspiring to the future self. You have an ideal, you have a future you'd prefer as opposed to a future you would prefer less. And that hierarchy depends how much you've fleshed it out. But okay, now I'm jumping ahead of myself. So the idea is I want to be someone else. It's kind of what aspiration is. Now for that, so we'll use the example of I want to learn guitar. Now, do I simply say, okay, these are the hands that cannot play guitar, let's chop them off and let's replace them with hands that can play guitar? No. I want to be the person who's confident in social situations. Can I just get rid of all of the bad habits and download all of this charismatic energy and this flow and all of this stuff? No. And you see the pattern. So the idea from the Divine Double is that I can't sacrifice myself into my future self. It doesn't work for an aspiration. Take this in a smaller level, go back to the guitar. If I want to learn how to play guitar, I have to accept where I am first. And I have to accept how slow my progress is. And I have to accept the fumbles and the fact that I have good days and I have bad days. I like jump ahead 2 steps and maybe I might forget something. I can't surrender my current self into my future self. But what I can do is surrender myself into my relationship with my current self. I commit to learning guitar, and playing guitar, not just playing it once, not just learning one song. I want to learn the process of playing guitar. So for that, I see my ideal. It is a judge. It looks at me and says, you are not enough, that you are not there yet, and it does. And yet I want to relate to it. I want to keep having that conversation and saying, okay, where am I wrong? What's wrong with what I'm doing at the moment? Can I push more? Can I do more? Do I need to rest? Am I well balanced? All of these different questions. These are the questions you're asking that future self. And then the leap of faith, putting it into action. Not asking the questions, not thinking it through, not anticipating, not not workshopping it, problem solving it, none of this. Putting it into process, putting it into your perspective, shifting into that type of perspective, participating in the world in the way that a musician participates in the world, perhaps. Those, again, those 4 levels of knowing: propositional, procedural, doing stuff; perspectival, what it's like to be someone else, anyone else from a different culture, different background; and then participation, how you participate in the world affects how the world participates with you. If I know how to play music, geez, like, different rooms open up, silence becomes maybe a more attractive thing, or a group setting becomes a more attractive thing, or any of these things. I'll say is that those questions I'm asking, to embody it, to enact it, to do it, I can't simply ask the questions and then leave it. I have to then say, okay, those questions, the answer to those questions, I surrender myself into those. I humble myself into those. Because they're fluid, they're moving. They're the thing that moves with you. So how am I doing it wrong today? That question, okay, I'm surrendering into always asking that question, always searching for that answer. Could I do more? Again, checking in with yourself, but checking in with the question and surrendering into that relationship, surrendering into the fact that the commitment that you will check in every day. I'm going to stop kind of harping on. That's the premise. That's your soul. The soul isn't in me per se. Like, it's not some kind of semi-goo thing from Ghostbusters. It's not in the future. It's not the questions I ask the future. It's this, like, surrendering into the process of what those questions are, kind of into that loop. I can only phrase it as that. So with all of that said, I went on a little bit longer than I thought I would there. Why does prayer matter? And why does ritualizing it matter? So prayer is a formal way of humbling yourself down on your knees, appealing to a higher power, saying that I'm currently not enough, looking elsewhere for that, in a way that you will get back up and say, okay, now I step into it. So if again, like we said last week, if we only listen to the authentic self, it's delusion. If we only listen to the cosmic map, which is kind of linked here, some sort of judge, some sort of ideal, then we get a tyranny. So you have to have the dialogue between the two, and prayer is the formal setting or formal structure of a dialogue there. Meditation, on the other hand, is like a practice of returning. It's a muscle, you're exercising it. How often can I pull myself back from getting caught in that thought pattern, that rabbit hole, that loop? So can I pull myself back? There's a difference there. All spiritual practices are not the same. They don't quite exercise the same muscles. Okay. And then we have ritual. Why is prayer itself? So prayer historically has been that sense. This is fair enough. But why can I not just, write it out, self-author, journal, have like a bucket list? Why can I not do dialogues, as in like write it out? All of which are extremely rich, all of which, and I definitely do not mean to denigrate them, but they're functional. They're not necessarily as personal and as intimate. So here's one thing. Meditation and the whole Eastern philosophy has come into the West in the last 30 years pretty strong. And the reason what we've done with it is we've capitalized it. We've said, okay, if you meditate, you can now be more focused. If you do breath work, now you can push yourself harder at work. You do the practice so that you get the reward. There's still an output to it, which is the wrong way to approach spiritual practice. It is, if I'm going to be a musician, I want to play, and every now and then I might hit something that's excellent, but really my love is for the process, is being at that limit, being at, these are patterns I've always done, mess around with it, that's wrong, da 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 da. I was like, oh, that was magic. And and if you're just chasing those magic moments, you'll kind of cripple yourself. I didn't have a magic moment today, therefore I'm a bad musician, and therefore I should just, anyway, okay. So, ritualizing it, or prayer, seems to have a bit more of an intimate setting. You are talking, it's no longer kind of like being accountable to yourself. It's no longer kind of being accountable in a social situation where you have that sense, as in like being accountable to yourself. I want to be a certain type of person. I want to be honest. Okay, but that situation, like, there was like a little lie there, and that's okay. It was for their best interest. It was to save them a bit of heartache. It was to whatever else. It's just like, and my child kind of skipped a step in one of the games. Am I going to be brutally honest and hold his feet to the fire and make sure he gets every little bit right? No, that wouldn't be in the spirit of honesty. That'd be like, honestly, I want him to flourish, and I want him to be his best and to get the game. So he'll pick it up, and trusting in that sort of thing. So that's me checking in with my sacred self, like we said last week. I can check in with my surroundings, and people can kind of shame me. It's like, oh, I don't want to get caught lying, and you can see the pitfall there as well. But having a space where you have this personal relationship with that thing that's higher. I hurt someone else, and geez, I didn't want to be that person. Just checking with myself. And geez, people are going to look at me different now because I'm after hurting someone. That's a bummer, isn't it? But you pray and you say, hey, some higher power, I'm sorry to you. Because not only did I not live up to my standards, not only did I hurt someone else, but you're the kind of unity type thing. And yeah, there's just to internalize that, to have that personal relationship with it. So that's why prayer, as opposed to self-authoring. So we're getting there. So the soul, that relationship between, the more intimate version of that in prayer. And then why ritualize it? Why is that important? Like, why do I need to set it in stone? Why do I need to honor the Sabbath? Why is that in the Bible? Why is that in the Ten Commandments? Just, can I not have a holy day on a Thursday, on a Tuesday, as in like squeeze it, like fit into my schedule? Like, I'm not going to say squeeze it. Isn't there an honorable way of, fitting it into my schedule, but allowing for the flexibility of life to shape it? And yeah, but you won't. And we don't. And I don't. The reason that the Sabbath is because your feet are held to the fire and it's the Sabbath. And there's no flexibility. So, and the same thing so that's why maybe a commitment part is important. The performance part, what can I say about that? The performance part is back to your 4 levels of knowing. It is your, propositional, procedural, perspectival, and participatory. Okay, I'm going to participate as if this means something. I'm going to find some way of participating. Like, even if this is just simply Pavlov's dog. So Pavlov's dog is classical conditioning. He rang the bell, he fed the dog. Rang the bell, fed the dog. Rang the bell, The dog expected food, starts salivating. That's classical conditioning. When I do this, this happens. Da da da, this happens. Okay, so just apply that to every aspect of life. So some sort of, like, I do a ritual before the workshops, but a ritual of approaching that intimate conversation. I'm busy, I'm doing stuff, okay, writing stuff down, here's my desk, here's my office, here's the kitchen, here's me cooking, or whatever else. And where in all of that is there a space for you to have the intimate relationship? Maybe the way you classically condition, the way you say, hey, this is where I am, this is what I'm committing to for the next few minutes or whatever, a few seconds. We don't have any of it. So the way I'm going to differentiate, the way I'm going to say, hey, this is different. This isn't my day-to-day. This isn't me looking at myself or the wider world. This is me checking in with something way up there. Maybe that's on your knees. The ritual lets yourself know at all the levels, okay, this is how I participate. This is how I show up to this arena. And this is how then the arena treats me then in response. I show up to work in a suit, and the arena, the space, treats me as if I have a suit on. I do that the whole time. Okay, now I start building stuff on this participation ground level. I start building the networks, the habits, that we start building all of this stuff. And then you start moving how you participate. You turn up in trackies one of the days, and things will shift, and people might like that. They get to see a softer side of you and all of the rest. Don't get lost in that. Just the structure, how you participate, how you show up matters. Then you have perspective. Your perspective on it. So maybe being on your knees is a very humble stance to take. And maybe, again, recognizing that space, that position as the place where you communicate might have the perspective or procedural. The procedure of it, again, like muscle memory. Okay, I can sit in this position. I'm used to meditating for 15-20 minutes, more, less. Like, this is just, I'm in this position. The procedure has now developed. It has now grown. It started off with 1-2 minutes just to learn what it is. I started testing myself, started moving forward, and now the procedure, now the procedure is, and it holds the practice. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to just reiterate the question. What if the biggest difference between us and our ancestors isn't the tech, isn't the change in communication between us, isn't the change in transport and networking ability between us, isn't the difference in tech and how we reflect back to ourselves and all the changes that are happening in our generation as well as the younger generation, and all of these vastly different psychotechnologies, these different ways of being in the world that have changed and pulled us. What if the biggest difference, comparing everyone from our grandparents and beforehand, like that much ancestry, there's there's 200,000 years of humanity? So the last 50 to 80, the biggest difference, that section to all of that, is the fact that we don't pray. We don't have a ritual or a performance or a space somewhere that we recognize, that we contact the higher. We don't have contact with our soul, perhaps. We don't have that sacrificial element into the relationship between us and our ideal, an ideal, but the sacrifice into the relationship part. And for that to be an intimate connection, because maybe we're all about productivity and all, we're doing meditations and ice baths and breath work and nature walks and grounding and all of these things, but the intimacy of of going face to face with a higher power that holds you accountable in a way that only kind of that conversation can. Oh, so let me finish by saying that, as always, my 16-year-old self would laugh so hard if he knew that this is an argument I'd be putting forward. Just an idea that I'd be putting in front of you for you to chew on and for you to kind of just be like, I wonder how we'll replace that gap in the world. Man, this is just not where I thought I'd be. And yet that book sticks with me. And yet now this phrase is sticking with me of prayer being the biggest difference. Really? Bigger than oil, bigger than fossil fuels? I don't know. But I put it forward as best I can, and hopefully you'll find it as fun to chew on as I have. So with all of that, I hope you have had a good week. I hope you are looking forward to the week to come. I hope you have a relationship with the version of you next week that is to come, and there's tension there and a relationship and love there, hopefully. And yeah, so with all of that, thank you for your time and attention. I'll see you next week. Bye guys.